The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Captain Jake Morrison walked through them, his black uniform crisp and his shoulders straight. Behind him, Lieutenant Amy Clark carried a thick folder of documents. Both humans looked small in the enormous room that stretched up toward a ceiling lost in shadows. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose in tiers around the central floor. Some had 4 arms, others had tentacles instead of legs. A few breathed through gills that opened and closed on their necks. The Zeltharian ambassador sat in the highest seat, his blue skin gleaming under the bright lights. His 3 eyes looked down at the humans with what might have been amusement. Morrison had made this walk many times before. For 30 years, humanity had been part of the Galactic Council. They paid their taxes, followed the rules, and asked politely for help when they needed it. But they were always treated like children who had just learned to walk. Captain Morrison, the Zeltharian ambassador said, his voice echoing through the chamber, "You have requested an audience to discuss defensive technology for human colonies." Again. "Yes, sir," Morrison replied. He did not let his anger show in his voice. "The Raider, attacks on our outer colonies have increased by 40% this year. We need better shields and weapons to protect our people." A low rumble of what sounded like laughter came from the alien council members. The Corvan representative, who looked like a giant insect, clicked his mandibles together. "Humans always want more weapons," he said. "Perhaps if you stayed in your assigned space, you would not have these problems." Morrison's jaw tightened. The assigned space was a small section of the galaxy with only 12 habitable worlds. Other species had hundreds of planets, but humans were told they should be grateful for what they had. "With respect," Morrison said, "the Raiders are attacking colonies that have been established for over 20 years. These are not new settlements in contested space. These are our homes." The Zeltharian ambassador waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "The Council provides protection for all member species. You do not need advanced weapons. Such technology in the hands of a young species could be dangerous." Amy Clark stepped forward and whispered in Morrison's ear. "Sir, the latest report from New Denver came in an hour ago. 300 civilians dead. The Raiders took everything and burned the rest." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. 300 people. Men, women, children. All dead because the Council refused to let humanity defend itself properly. "Ambassador," Morrison said, his voice louder now. "While we have been waiting for this meeting, another human colony was destroyed. 300 people are dead. We could have saved them if we had the defensive technology that you freely give to other species." "Other species have proven themselves responsible," the Corvan representative said. "They have been part of the galactic community for thousands of years. Humans have existed in space for less than a century. The Yalari were given defensive technology after only 50 years in the Council," Amy Clark said, reading from her folder. "The Bendari received advanced shields after 30 years. The Corvans themselves were given weapons technology after—" "Enough," the Zeltharian ambassador said. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "The situations were different. Those species showed wisdom and restraint. Humans show only aggression and expansion." Morrison felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Aggression? We have never started a war with any council member. We have never broken a treaty or violated council law. We pay our taxes and follow every regulation you impose on us. Yet you constantly push against your boundaries," another alien said. This one had gray skin and no visible eyes. "You establish new colonies without permission. You explore systems that are marked as restricted. You act as if the galaxy belongs to you." "The galaxy belongs to everyone," Morrison said. "At least that's what the Council Charter says." The chamber fell silent. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Council Charter did indeed say that all species had equal rights to explore and settle in unclaimed space. But for 30 years, humans had been told that their expansion needed to be approved by the Council first. The Zeltharian ambassador leaned forward. "Captain Morrison, let me be clear. Humans are a primitive species that has barely learned to leave its homeworld. You require guidance, You require oversight. And most importantly, you require protection from your own aggressive nature. Our aggressive nature? Morrison's voice was quiet, but everyone in the chamber could hear him clearly. In the past 30 years, how many wars have the Corvins fought? How many planets have the Zeltharians conquered? How many species have the Drakari enslaved? That is different, the ambassador said quickly. Those were necessary for galactic stability. But when humans defend themselves from pirates and raiders, we are called aggressive, Morrison continued. When we explore empty systems, we are called expansionist. When we ask for the same technology that you give freely to others, we are called primitive. Amy Clark's communication device buzzed softly. She looked at the message and her face went pale. She leaned close to Morrison again. Sir, another attack. The Kepler mining station. 2,000 people. 2,000 more. Morrison thought of the families, the workers, the children in the station's schools, all dead because the council had decided that humans could not be trusted with weapons good enough to fight off raiders. Ambassador, Morrison said, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. I am formally requesting defensive technology, upgrades for all human colonies. Not asking, requesting, as is our right under the council charter. Request denied, the ambassador said without hesitation. Primitive species require guidance, not weapons. You should be grateful for the protection we provide. Morrison stared at the alien for a long moment. Protection. The council called it protection while human colonies burned and human families died. They called it guidance while keeping humanity trapped in a small corner of the galaxy. They called it wisdom while treating humans like children who could not be trusted with anything more dangerous than a kitchen knife. Grateful, Morrison repeated slowly. You want us to be grateful? Yes, the ambassador said. Grateful and patient. In time, perhaps in another century or two, humans may be ready for more responsibility. Morrison looked around the chamber, at the hundreds of alien faces. Some looked bored, others looked amused. A few looked almost sympathetic, but none of them spoke up for humanity. None of them would risk their own position to help the humans. Lieutenant Clark, Morrison said without taking his eyes off the ambassador. Please open a quantum link. To Earth. Presidential priority. Amy's fingers moved quickly over her device. Within seconds, President Lisa Carter's voice filled the chamber through the communication system. Captain Morrison, I can hear everything. The link has been open for the past 10 minutes. Morrison smiled grimly. The president had been listening to the entire conversation. She had heard the dismissal, the condescension, the casual cruelty of beings who claimed to be humanity's protectors while letting human colonies burn. Madam President, Morrison said loudly, making sure his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. I formally recommend that humanity withdraw from the Galactic Council immediately. Recommendation accepted, Captain, President Carter replied without hesitation. As of this moment, humanity is no longer a member of the Galactic Council. We reject your authority, your protection, and your guidance. We will make our own way in the galaxy. The chamber erupted in shocked voices and alien sounds that might have been laughter or anger. The Zeltharian ambassador rose from his seat, his 3 eyes wide with surprise. You cannot do this, he said. You will not survive without the Council's protection. Morrison turned toward the massive doors. Ambassador, humanity did not crawl out of caves and reach for the stars so we could bow before bureaucrats. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed weaker species. We will survive without you. He started walking toward the exit, Amy Clark beside him. Behind them, the aliens were shouting questions and demands, but neither human looked back. Captain, Amy said quietly as they reached the doors. What happens now? Morrison smiled, and for the first time in years it was a real smile. Now we remind the galaxy why humans are not to be underestimated. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss, cutting off the chaos in the council chamber. In the corridor beyond, Morrison straightened his shoulders and began planning humanity's future. A future without permission, without oversight, without limits. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had pushed humanity too far, and now they would learn what humans could accomplish when they stopped asking for permission and started taking what they needed to survive. Commander Ben Parker stood in the control room of Luna Station, watching dozens of screens that showed human ships all across the galaxy. Each screen represented a different colony, mining station, or trade post that was now completely cut off from the Galactic Council's network. 3 months had passed since humanity's dramatic exit from the Council, and the real work was just beginning. "Status report," Parker said to the young officer beside him. "Sir, we've successfully disconnected from all Council communication networks," Lieutenant Danny Ross replied, reading from his tablet. "Our own quantum communication system is now active between all human worlds. It's slower than the Council network, but it works." Parker nodded. Building their own communication system had been the first priority. Without it, human colonies scattered across dozens of star systems would be isolated and helpless. The Council had expected humanity to come crawling back within weeks, begging to be reconnected to their networks. Instead, human engineers had worked day and night to create something of their own. On the far side of the galaxy, Dr. Kate Sullivan wiped sweat from her forehead as she looked at the strange alien device on her laboratory table. The research facility on Kepler 7 was hidden deep underground, and only a few dozen people knew it existed. Kate's job was simple in theory, but nearly impossible in practice. Figure out how alien technology worked and make it better. "Any progress with the shield generator?" asked Dr. Mike Turner, her research partner. "Some," Kate replied, pointing to the device with a metal tool. "The Council technology is actually pretty basic. They make it complicated on purpose so other species can't copy it easily. But if you strip away all the extra parts, the core system is simple." She pressed a button, and a shimmering blue field appeared around a small metal box. "This is twice as strong as the original Council version, and it uses half the power." Mike whistled softly. "The Council told us their shields were the best possible. They said it would take humans centuries to understand them." Kate smiled grimly. "The Council lied about a lot of things. They wanted to keep everyone else weak and dependent. Well, we're not dependent anymore." In another part of the galaxy, Captain Rick Hayes stood on the bridge of the exploration ship UES Pathfinder. His crew of 30 humans was mapping hyperspace, routes that no Council ship had ever used. The Council had always told member species which routes were safe and which were forbidden. Now humanity was learning that many of the forbidden routes were actually faster and safer than the ones the Council allowed. "Captain," called out Navigator Lisa Chen from her station, "I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors. It looks like artificial structures." Rick moved to her station and looked at the sensor display. In the distance, barely visible, were what looked like massive metal structures floating in empty space. "Any Council records of this system?" "None, sir. According to their charts, this area is empty space marked as dangerous." Rick smiled. "Another Council lie. Take us closer, but keep the shields ready. Let's see what they didn't want us to find." As the Pathfinder approached, the structures became clearer. They were enormous space stations, clearly ancient but still intact. Some were larger than Earth's moon. The metal was unfamiliar, covered with symbols that looked nothing like any known alien language. "My God," whispered Dr. Jenny Walsh, the ship's archaeologist. "These are old, really old, maybe millions of years." "Scan for technology," Rick ordered. "If these stations still have power, there might be something useful here." The scans revealed incredible things. The ancient stations contained manufacturing equipment that could create materials stronger than anything the Council used. There were power generators that produced energy from empty space itself. Most importantly, there were computer systems with databases full of scientific knowledge. "Captain," Jenny said, her voice excited, "this is why the Council marked this area as forbidden. They knew about these stations, but they kept them secret. They didn't want anyone else to find this technology." Back on Earth, engineer Nicole Foster was solving a different problem. Humanity needed to build ships, weapons, and equipment without any help from Council suppliers. The problem was that many important materials could only be found on planets controlled by Council species. Nicole's solution was elegant and revolutionary. Instead of mining rare materials from distant planets, she developed a way to create them from common elements using advanced fusion techniques. The process required enormous amounts of energy, but humanity had plenty of that thanks to their improved fusion reactors. "We can make anything now," she explained to President Lisa Carter during a video conference. "The Council kept us dependent by controlling the supply of rare materials. But we don't need their materials anymore. We can make our own, and they're actually better quality." President Carter smiled. "How long before we can equip all our colonies with proper defenses?" 6 months for basic shields and weapons," Nicole replied. 1 year for the advanced systems. We'll never be defenseless again." The Council was beginning to notice humanity's rapid progress. Ambassador Vextar, a new Zeltharian appointed to monitor human activity, watched the intelligence reports with growing concern. Human ships were appearing in sectors that should have been impossible for them to reach. Human colonies were building defenses that seemed more advanced than anything the Council possessed. "How is this possible?" Vextar asked his aide. "Humans are a primitive species. They should be struggling to survive without our support." "Sir," the aide replied nervously, "our sources indicate that humans are reverse engineering our technology and improving it. They're also exploring areas we marked as forbidden and finding things we hoped would remain hidden." Vextar's 3 eyes narrowed. "What kind of things?" "Ancient ruins, sir. Technology from the predecessor civilizations. The humans are learning from races that existed before the Council was formed." This was disturbing news. The Council had spent thousands of years carefully controlling the flow of advanced technology throughout the galaxy. They had hidden or destroyed most evidence of the ancient races that once ruled the stars, keeping only what they needed to maintain their own power. Now humans were undoing centuries of careful suppression. On Mars, Admiral Tony Brooks was planning humanity's military future. The attacks on human colonies had continued after leaving the Council, but now they were ready to fight back. The new human warships were faster, stronger, and better armed than anything the raiders had ever seen. "The next time they attack one of our colonies," Brooks told his staff, "we'll be ready, and we'll make sure they never attack humans again." His confidence was not misplaced. Human military technology had advanced dramatically in just a few months. Dr. Kate Sullivan's improved shields could stop weapons that would have destroyed older human ships. Nicole Foster's new materials made human armor nearly indestructible. Most importantly, Rick Hayes's exploration missions had discovered manufacturing techniques that allowed humanity to build ships faster than anyone thought possible. The galaxy was beginning to take notice. Several small species that had always been treated poorly by the Council were quietly reaching out to human ambassadors. They wanted to know if humanity would be willing to share some of their new technology. They were tired of being bullied by the Council's major powers. Amy Clark, now promoted to commander, was handling these diplomatic contacts. She met with representatives from the Binari, a peaceful trading species that the Council had always ignored. "We have heard remarkable things about human progress," the Binari ambassador said during their secret meeting. "We would like to establish trade relationships with your people." "What do you offer?" Amy asked. "Information," the ambassador replied. "We know which Council species are unhappy with the current system. We know about secret technologies they have hidden from other members. We know about their military weaknesses." Amy smiled. Humanity was no longer alone. The Council's decision to cast them out was creating exactly the opposite effect from what they had intended. Instead of crawling back as defeated supplicants, humans were becoming the center of a growing alliance of species who were tired of Council control. The transformation was remarkable. In less than a year, humanity had gone from being a restricted, junior member of the galactic community to an independent power with advanced technology and growing influence. The Council members who had dismissed humans as primitive were beginning to realize they had made a serious mistake. But the real test was still coming. Soon, the Council would decide that humanity's independence was a threat that could not be tolerated. When that happened, the galaxy would discover just how much humans had learned during their months of isolation. The universe was about to change forever, and it was humanity that would be driving that change. Admiral Tony Brooks stood on the bridge of the UES Independence, watching the massive Council enforcement fleet approach through the darkness of space. 300 Council warships, led by the Zeltharian flagship Dominion, had come to teach humanity a lesson. They expected to find frightened humans hiding behind weak defenses. Instead, they found something that made their sensors scream warnings they had never seen before. "Admiral," reported Captain Helen Ward from her position, aboard the patrol ship UES Guardian, "the Council fleet is demanding our immediate surrender. They say we have violated galactic law by expanding beyond our assigned territory." Brooks smiled coldly. "Tell them we don't recognize their authority anymore. We left the Council, remember?" The confrontation had been building for 2 years. After humanity's dramatic exit from the Council, they had continued to expand, explore, and advance at a rate that terrified the galactic establishment. Human colonies now existed in dozens of systems the Council had marked as forbidden. Human ships regularly traveled through hyperspace routes that were supposed to be impossible to navigate. Most disturbing of all, several minor species had quietly left the Council to join humanity's growing alliance. The Council's patience had finally run out. They had assembled the largest military force in galactic history to crush human independence once and for all. Every major species had contributed ships to the fleet. The Zeltharians provided the command structure, the Corvins brought their heavy assault vessels, and the Drakari contributed their feared battlecruisers. "This is Admiral Krextar of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet," came the transmission from the enemy flagship. "By the authority granted to us by the Council Charter, we order all human vessels to stand down immediately. Your species will return to Council oversight, and your illegal colonies will be disbanded." Brooks activated his communication system, broadcasting his response to both the enemy fleet and every human ship in the sector. "This is Admiral Tony Brooks of the Human Defense Force. We reject the Council's authority. We will defend our people and our territory. If you want to fight, you'll get one." The Council ships began forming their traditional attack formation, a complex arrangement designed to overwhelm defenders through coordinated fire. It was a formation that had crushed rebellions for thousands of years. But the humans were not using the defensive patterns the Council expected. Dr. Alex Turner, working from a secret laboratory hidden in an asteroid field, watched the battle preparations through long-range sensors. His quantum tunneling technology was about to be tested in actual combat for the first time. The device he had created could move human ships instantly across vast distances, making them appear anywhere in the galaxy within seconds. "Admiral Brooks," Turner said through his secured communication channel, "quantum tunnel generators are ready. We can put your ships anywhere you want them." "Understood, Doctor," Brooks replied. "All human ships prepare for quantum displacement on my command." Captain Helen Ward felt the familiar sensation of reality bending around her ship as the quantum tunnel activated. One moment she was facing the massive Council fleet from several thousand kilometers away. The next moment her ship was directly behind the enemy formation, her weapons aimed at their unprotected rear sections. The Council fleet commanders were still trying to understand what had happened when human weapons began firing. The new plasma cannons, developed from ancient technology found in the Forbidden Ruins, cut through Council shields like paper. Ships that had been considered invincible for centuries were destroyed in seconds. "Impossible," Admiral Krextar muttered as he watched his tactical display. Human ships were appearing and disappearing all around his fleet, striking from impossible angles before vanishing again. His weapons could not lock onto targets that could teleport instantly across space. The battle that was supposed to demonstrate Council superiority instead became a massacre of Council forces. Human ships, smaller and fewer in number, systematically destroyed the massive enforcement fleet. The advanced shields developed by Dr. Kate Sullivan absorbed enemy fire without difficulty. The improved weapons created by Nicole Foster's manufacturing processes struck with devastating accuracy. Within 2 hours, half the Council fleet was destroyed or disabled. The rest were trying desperately to retreat, but human ships kept appearing, in their path blocking escape routes and forcing surrenders. "Admiral," reported Captain Ward, "we've disabled the Zeltharian flagship. Admiral Krextar is requesting terms for surrender." Brooks had been waiting for this moment. Put him through. The Zeltharian commander appeared on the main screen, his blue skin pale with shock. Admiral Brooks, I surrender my fleet. Please, no more killing. Admiral Krextar, Brooks said calmly. You came here to force humanity back into submission. You brought 300 ships to crush our independence. Now you're asking for mercy from the primitive species you thought you could easily defeat. Krextar's 3 eyes looked around his damaged bridge. Your technology, it's impossible. How did humans advance so quickly? We had motivation, Brooks replied. You taught us that we could not depend on anyone but ourselves, so we learned to be self-sufficient. We learned to be strong. We learned to be free. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The impossible had happened. Humanity had not just defeated a Council enforcement fleet, they had destroyed it completely while suffering almost no losses of their own. The species that the Council had dismissed as primitive had just proven they were the most advanced military force in known space. Commander Sarah Blake, now serving as humanity's diplomatic representative, was flooded with communication requests from across the galaxy. Species that had never shown interest in humanity before were suddenly very eager to establish peaceful relationships. Sarah, came a transmission from the Yalari homeworld. We wish to discuss a mutual defense treaty with humanity. The Council has overreached in its authority. Similar messages came from dozens of other species. The Bendari wanted trade agreements. The Altair Confederation offered military alliance. Even some of the major Council species were quietly reaching out through back channels, asking about the possibility of switching sides. The psychological impact was devastating for the Council. For thousands of years, they had maintained control, through the belief that they were technologically superior to all other species. Now a species they had considered barely civilized had demonstrated technology that was clearly decades or centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed. President. Lisa Carter addressed the galaxy from her office in Washington. Her speech was broadcast on every communication network, reaching billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. For 30 years, humanity asked to be treated as equals in the galactic community, she said, her voice calm but firm. We were told we were too primitive, too aggressive, too young to deserve respect. Today, that same primitive species defeated the largest military force ever assembled by the Galactic Council. She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. We did not seek this conflict. We wanted only to be free to protect our people and explore the galaxy as equals. The Council chose to respond to our independence with military force. They have learned the cost of that decision. Carter looked directly into the camera and threw it at every being watching across the galaxy. To the species still under Council control, we offer you a choice. Continue to accept limitations imposed by beings who fear your potential, or join us in building a galaxy where all species can reach for the stars without asking permission. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within days, 17 species formally withdrew from the Galactic Council to join humanity's alliance. Others began making demands for greater autonomy and access to advanced technologies. The Council's carefully maintained structure of control was crumbling. The old galaxy, where a few ancient species controlled the destiny of hundreds of others, was ending. A new era was beginning, led by the species that had been underestimated, dismissed, and cast out. Humanity had not just won a military victory, they had sparked a revolution that would reshape the entire universe. The Council members who had laughed at humanity's departure from their chambers now faced a stark reality. They had created their own worst enemy by forcing humanity to become independent. And that enemy was now offering freedom to every species in the galaxy. President Danny Wilson stood at the podium in the center of the new Galactic Assembly Hall, looking out at representatives from over 200 species. The hall was built on a neutral world called Haven, chosen specifically because no single species controlled it. Unlike the old council chambers where a few powerful species looked down on everyone else, this hall was designed as a circle where every representative sat at the same level. 3 years had passed since humanity's crushing victory over the Council enforcement fleet. The old Galactic Council had collapsed completely, its member species either joining the new assembly or retreating to their home systems in isolation. The galaxy that had once been ruled by fear and artificial limitations was now exploring possibilities that had been forbidden for thousands of years. "Friends," Wilson began, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the hall. 3 years ago, many of you thought humanity was making a terrible mistake by leaving the old council. You thought we would be destroyed by our independence. Instead, we discovered that independence was exactly what the galaxy needed. Captain Maria Santos sat in the human delegation section, wearing the uniform of the new United Species Fleet. Her ship, the USS Harmony, was the first vessel crewed by beings from 12 different species working together as equals. Yesterday, they had returned from the galaxy's core region, bringing back discoveries that would have been impossible under the old system. "Captain Santos," Wilson said, turning toward her, "please share what your mixed crew found in the galactic core." Maria stood and activated a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red areas marked regions that the old council had declared permanently forbidden. Green areas showed where the new assembly's exploration fleets had been working. "Mr. President," Maria said, "we discovered that the forbidden zones contain the ruins of at least 12 different advanced civilizations. The old council knew about these ruins but kept them secret to maintain their own power. These civilizations had technology that makes even our current advances look primitive." She pointed to a cluster of stars near the galaxy's center. "In this system alone, we found manufacturing techniques that can create materials atom by atom, power sources that draw energy directly from space itself, and transportation methods that make our quantum tunneling look slow." The hall buzzed with excited conversations in dozens of different languages. Representatives were realizing that the old council had not just limited their political freedom, but had deliberately kept them ignorant of technologies that could have solved countless problems. Chief Engineer Paul Davis was overseeing the construction of the galaxy's new infrastructure from his command center on New Terra Station. Massive space installations connected previously isolated regions, allowing species to trade and communicate freely for the first time in galactic history. The projects used techniques learned from the ancient ruins, combined with improvements developed by the multi-species research teams. "Paul," came a message from his assistant engineer Lisa Park, "the Bendari delegation wants to know when the new hyperspace network will reach their territory." Paul checked his schedules on the computer display. "Tell them 6 months. Once we finish the main trunk lines, every species in the assembly will be able to reach any other member world within days instead of months." This was revolutionary. Under the old council system, travel between distant species could take years because ships had to use only approved routes that were deliberately inefficient. The council had controlled the galaxy by controlling movement and communication. Now, beings from opposite sides of the galaxy could meet and work together easily. Dr. Kate Sullivan, now Director of Advanced Research for the Assembly, was leading a team of scientists from 30 different species. They were working together in laboratories that the old council would never have allowed to exist. Species that had been kept ignorant of each other's knowledge were now sharing discoveries that were advancing science at an incredible pace. The breakthrough came when we combined Yalari crystal technology with human quantum mechanics and Altair energy manipulation, Kate explained to President Wilson during their weekly briefing. "None of us could have discovered this alone, but working together, we've created power sources that are practically unlimited." "How unlimited?" Wilson asked. "We can power entire star systems with devices the size of a small building," Kate replied. "Every species in the galaxy could have unlimited clean energy. No more fighting over resources, no more energy shortages, no more dependence on others for power." This was the promise of the new galaxy: cooperation instead of competition, sharing instead of hoarding, exploration instead of restriction. The old council had maintained control by keeping species dependent on each other in carefully managed ways. The new assembly encouraged independence and mutual support. Admiral Tony Brooks, now retired from active military service, sat in his garden on New Colorado, watching the construction of a massive space station in orbit above the planet. The station was being built by crews from dozens of species working together. Seltharian engineers worked alongside human technicians. Corvin heavy lifters cooperated with Altair precision workers. Even some of the old council species had joined the project after their governments finally accepted the new reality. His grandson, 8-year-old Bobby Brooks, sat beside him reading from a tablet. "Grandpa, my teacher says that before the assembly most species never got to meet each other, is that true?" Brooks smiled. "It's true, Bobby. The old council kept everyone separated. They were afraid that if species worked together they might become too strong to control." "That sounds stupid," Bobby said with the direct honesty of a child. "It was stupid," Brooks agreed. "But it took your grandmother's generation to be brave enough to walk away from that system and build something better." The boy looked up at the space station where humans and aliens were working side by side. "I want to work on one of those ships when I grow up. With aliens, I mean. With other species." "You will," Brooks said confidently. "Your generation will explore places we never dreamed of reaching. You'll work with beings we haven't even met. Yet, the galaxy is bigger than we ever imagined, and now we're finally free to explore all of it." President Wilson concluded his speech to the assembly with a promise that would have been impossible under the old system. Within 10 years, every species in this assembly will have access to unlimited energy, faster-than-light travel, and communication networks that connect the entire galaxy. Within 20 years, we will begin exploring other galaxies. The representatives erupted in cheers and sounds of approval in hundreds of different languages. Other galaxies. The old council had spent thousands of years convincing everyone that such things were impossible dreams. The assembly was making them realistic goals. Later that day, Wilson met privately with former Ambassador Vextar, one of the few Zeltharian officials who had survived the transition to the new system. The alien looked older and more tired than Wilson remembered. "President Wilson," Vextar said, "I must ask you something. When humanity left the council, did you know this would happen? Did you plan to destroy our entire civilization?" Wilson considered the question carefully. "Ambassador, we didn't destroy your civilization. We freed it. Your people are now exploring technologies and ideas that your own government kept hidden from you for centuries. Zeltharian scientists are making discoveries they never could have made under the old system." Vexitar was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke again. "My people ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. We thought we were protecting everyone by maintaining order and stability. You were protecting your own power," Wilson said gently but firmly. "You convinced yourselves that other species needed to be controlled for their own good. But the truth is, you were afraid of what they might accomplish if they were free." The former ambassador nodded slowly. "And now we know. They accomplished more in 3 years of freedom than in 3,000 years of our guidance." Wilson looked out the window at ships from dozens of species working together in space. "The old galaxy is gone forever, Ambassador. But the new one is better than anything we could have imagined. Your people have a place in it, if they choose to embrace change instead of mourning the past." As the sun set on Haven, the galaxy's new capital world, beings from hundreds of species worked together on projects that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. The day humanity left the Galactic Council had indeed changed the universe forever. It had transformed a galaxy ruled by fear and limitation into one driven by cooperation and unlimited possibility. The universe was vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. For the first time in galactic history, every species was free to reach for them.